Hi, this is Tom again. This time I'm going to be doing a long-term review of the Freefly Ember 5K slow motion camera. So this is this little beauty. If I get my face out of the way, then the focus will go on that. Super cool. The reason I bought it was to try and find a little niche for myself. Not a lot of people can justify spending 15 grand, like £15,000 on a camera that just does slow motion. So at the time I had like a couple of Red cameras and a couple of Canon cameras. And because Canon have come such a long way in a short space of time with their kind of internal RAW and just the quality of their cameras, I just didn't see the gains from the Red cameras that I used to be able to see. So rather than have many cameras that do kind of the same thing, I decided to sell the Red cameras and invest in this Freefly Ember, which I felt would basically get me on jobs that I wouldn't otherwise be on them. So it was kind of like a good adds another string to my bow. And to be honest, I've had it a year and that has kind of proven true. I remember I used to think that like when I was much younger, when I bought my first Red camera, I thought that was going to give me loads of work, and it really didn't. But this one is actually kind of good in the sense that I've done a lot of collaborations with other directors and DOPs and stuff, and it's definitely kind of been on some really interesting projects with this. So I think it has been worthwhile, and yeah, I hope to use it a lot more. In fact, the last year I've just been building up it for a reel and just been using it and getting used to it. And actually at the end of this month I'm going to be kind of putting a new page up on my website for this new slow-mo service, which is going to be using this camera. And to be honest, it was a massive learning curve actually. So it was not just like you got the camera, now you can do everything. It's a completely different way of filming. It's a different way of thinking about filming, and really you only kind of really understand this when you own this camera and you start using it lots. And the first time I shot in my mum's garden, I was trying to shoot some bumblebees, and I had because this is the EF mount, so this is like the active EF mount one. So I was in the garden trying to shoot bumblebees, and I was using, because I didn't have much light, because it's England, we don't really have a lot of light all the time, I was using my 50mm EF 1.2. I was like, well, that's cool, just put it on 1.2 and we're good to go. The trouble is, when something's moving and and you can't give it direction, because I tried to give the bees direction, but they just didn't want to know. Then 1.2 is very difficult to pull focus on. It's difficult to kind of manage, but also that lens is very open up. It's like got crazy lack of sharpness, blooming, and it looks like a vintage lens. And the first thing I knew is I found out when you're shooting with like slow-mo, is you want everything to be really sharp, and you want to see everything, because it's showing you something that you can't see with your own eyes. So it's not like when you're filming like some arty film and you've got like the main actress's nose in focus or her eyes in focus, but you want all the background to be out of focus, and you want it to have this dreamy look. You don't want it to be too clinical. Well, that kind of goes out the window with slow motion, because you kind of do want it to be clinical. You really want to see everything. So I soon found out that f1.2, whilst it gives you enough light, it's no good. So I most of my stuff I've shot on this has actually been like f5.6, usually something like that, f5.6, f8, because you want, as things go in and out of focus, it's frustrating because something amazing is flying through the air in slow motion and then it just straight away will go out of focus. So you want a deeper depth of field. And I also found that I just wanted that really pin sharp slow-mo that you can only get in a Phantom. Like, you know, loads of things can do slow-mo, but it's always mushy and like soft, and as soon as you put it on a proper screen it looks crap. And so I was battling to try and get this, and I realized that actually the 180-degree shutter is designed for when you want a nice natural motion blur that looks like nice, again, not too clinical, not what you want when you're shooting like cinematic stuff. Again, with this, that's not what I want. So I started using a 90-degree shutter, which gives you less motion blur, and it just makes it, as something's flying through the air, it just makes it just crisp and sharp, and it just looks amazing. So the trouble is, when you stop your aperture down to f8 and you set your shutter to 90 degrees, every time you're doing that, you're increasing the amount of light you need. So, but for me, I'm kind of like, I've got to the point where that's the way it needs to be shot. So, you know, if you haven't got enough light, you still need to shoot f8, f5.6 and 90-degree shutter. You just might need to reduce the frames per second. So for instance, if you're trying to get 1,000 frames per second at 4K, which is what this does, and you've not got enough light, what I've tended to do is just go, right then, I'll do 600 frames a second at 5K, and then suddenly I've got like loads more light, and if I've got enough, that's cool. And even if you still haven't got enough, sometimes 300 frames per second, because if you're shooting humans don't move that fast. 300 frames per second is fine, and it won't be like a 120, like you get out these kind of reasonably priced cinema cameras, which looks softer than normal. Like the 120 is good to have, but it's not super sharp. This will do crisp, sharp. Anything you throw at it, it's going to be crisp. So, if you're going down to 400, 300 frames per second, that's still amazing. It's way better than what anything else can do. And then you'll get that look that you're after. And if you need the high frames and you want high frames, then you've got to have enough light. That's the thing. Because for me, the 90-degree shutter and the f-stop are non-negotiables. Because the only time I would go down on the f-stop maybe is if I'm shooting a wide shot, and I just don't think it's a bit more of a wide shot. So if you've got like f2, I've got the Sigma 18 to 35 f1.8, and it's really sharp lens actually, and even wide open is fairly sharp. If I was doing a wide shot of a bike flying past, and it was going to come really close to the lens, and it was, I wanted that kind of wide look, but I was struggling for light, I would contemplate putting that at f2 2.8 because it's wide. So you're not, you can still get most things in focus. This is the lens I've got with it actually. So it is the Sigma 18 to 35. And after that day in my mum's garden, I literally ordered this that day, because I soon realised that actually an 18 to 35 is really handy when you're dealing with like the crop factor of this. So 5K, this is a Super 35 crop, so 1.5. But quite often I find a sweet spot with this camera is 4K. If you're doing 800 frames per second, 1,000 frames per second in 4K is amazing. But then you're cropping about 1.6, 1.7. So then suddenly something like have an 18 to 35 is a very useful focal range. It's giving you like, it's giving you a 28 to 70 or something like that. That's not exact, but it's giving you something that's quite workable. So I literally just stays with the camera. I don't use this lens on anything else. I have no interest in using this lens on anything else. It stays on with this camera, and I haven't really chosen to rent this camera out, to be honest. I've been too busy using it. But if I did, I would rent it out with this, and that's it. Because this is literally, you could walk around. This combo is just made for each other. Absolutely made for each other. So getting the right lens is crucial. You need width and you need speed, and you need sharp, because you don't want slow. If you wanted like really soft slow-mo, you might as well shoot on your iPhone. Like you want crisp, sharp, high-end looking slow motion that you up to this point has really only been achievable with a Phantom, which costs like, you know, hundreds of thousands of pounds. So pros and cons of this camera. Well, you have to learn to basically how to shoot slow-mo. You have to learn what looks good. There's a real steep learning curve with it, but you know, you start getting the hang of it after a few months, a few shoots, and you start getting the settings that you like. And really, the camera, other than this challenge of shooting slow motion, it doesn't really do. There's nothing automated. Everything's manual focus, manual exposure, manual everything. The only thing that can be a bit of a hassle is this EF mount. It was designed by Freefly themselves, and it is really good for the most part, but you have to put quite a lot of weight down for it to kind of click in. So sometimes if you mount a lens and on that like a tripod, it doesn't click, and then it won't recognize. You go on, and then you won't be able to change your aperture because it won't recognize the electronic connection. So sometimes I have to put the weight of the lenses on top, and for that to work. Sometimes it works, but oftentimes that. Also, changing aperture electronically through the control system, it's fine, you can do it, but it's quite in full aperture stops, so sometimes you don't get the nuance that you want. It also can be a bit fiddly, and I would say I've got some Canon Cine Primes that have in EF that have the aperture ring. And I have to say, like, when using it with those lenses, it is a lot easier just to quickly really finesse how much light you want to get let in. So yeah, you know, it's good that you can use lenses like this, but if you're using cine lenses, it is a bit easier because of that aperture, not having to go into the menus, because it's not like a Canon camera or a Sony camera where you can just change the aperture like that. No, this is just how you get around the menus. So this, if you do this, you need to be in the menu, and you've got to go along, click aperture, then go down. It will go from f2 to f2.8 to f4 to f5.6. So it works generally, but oftentimes, if you don't need to borrow NDs, which is one good thing. There's two things you don't have to worry about with this camera. One is NDs, and the other one is a gimbal or image stabilization. Because unless you're going to speed it up, everything looks super smooth and super steady on this. V-Lock batteries. This is kind of the kit it comes with. Basically, this is all from Freefly. It's got the Freefly. It's basically a NATO rail. I have a NATO rail top handle. I have the Freefly side handle, and I've got this really cool small rig other NATO rail, which actually you can pinch this in and it'll go up and down. But the greatest thing about it is it has a little cold shoe on it, and I actually put my phone in portrait mode on that, and what it does is it gives me on the app that comes with this camera, the record button, if you have it in portrait, is at the bottom. And if you have this right there, you can literally just, and you have it right there, it can basically be a quick release. You can press record, like just while so if you're running around, handhold, you can just do with your phone. You can press record, stop it, or with wirelessly with the app. And that's really cool because the record button's here. So if you're hand holding it, it's difficult to press it. If you're on a tripod, obviously, it's not a problem. But what you soon realise is you don't really want to be recording any longer than you have to be, because it burns through footage fast and through data fast. However, that would be a really big problem if it wasn't for the genius workflow of getting footage off this camera with any Apple computer. So if you have an Apple computer, this is easy. I'm going to tell you how to do it. If you have a PC or a non-Apple computer, can't help you. You're on your own. But on Apple, you open up QuickTime. it's basically ProRes, straight out camera, ProRes, a 10-bit 422 LT. So it comes out, and you open up QuickTime, and then you press the home key and T, and you go into trim mode, and then you can scrub right the way through. Literally, this SSD on this camera is so fast, it's basically like having the fastest hard drive in the world just in a camera. So you can just scrub through, you find your in point in, find your out point out, and then you trim, makes it smaller, and then you just save as, and it will save a clip with just the bit that you've selected, which means you never take any footage off this camera that you don't want. So you don't download everything and then go through it. That's a dumb way of doing it. No, you basically just take the bits that you want off the camera, and then what you do, because there's a bit of a negative with this camera, is you can't delete clips. You can format the drive, but you can't delete clips. So what you need to do is get everything you want off the drive and then format the drive. And so that's a bit annoying, but to be honest, once you get into the workflow of it, it's not too bad. You know, because usually it's I think it's 4 terabytes or 5 terabytes. It's a lot. I haven't gone through all of it. If you've gone through all of that, then you're being way too liberal with your filming, and you need to slow down. You need to stop what you're doing and start thinking about what you're shooting way more, because you shouldn't really burn through all of this. It would take hours to download everything, the whole drive's worth. It would be ridiculous. So no, you don't want to just keep filming and filming. You need to be a bit more disciplined. And if you film properly and you think about what you're doing, then you'll never fill this up. And then at the end of the shoot day, to be honest, it can take a bit of a while. If you've been filming quite a lot, it's probably a good idea to unload at lunch, and then remember what you've unloaded and just unload what you do in the afternoon at the end of the day. That'll probably help. It's not the most professional workflow. You know, you can now get an expander that gives you an SDI out, and it also gives you the ability to put cartridge SSDs in and out. However, they're not cheap, these little SSDs, so it's something that, unless I really need it, and I'm not going to buy it because I'm getting on quite well like this. But it's nice to know that there is that option there, where if someone's like, right, we need to be unloading footage as we're filming, like, then you're like, okay, well, you know, I'm assuming if they're being that demanding, then they should be paying a lot. And if they are, then that will be the time where I think, okay, well, I'll justify the cost. Until then, I'm quite happy with the way it is. It does add a bit to the back as well, and at the moment it fits into my flight case just right, like that. So I'm happy. But as far as the actual, you know, once you get around the slow motion filming mentality, which is completely different, and you start getting you got the right lenses, you got your monitor, you got everything sorted out. It's actually a joy to use. You know, you work out your workflow, your methodology, and once you've got that, you know, once I started using 90-degree shutter, f5.6 or f8, and the footage came off it was just mind-blowing. It was so much better. So yeah, there's a learning curve, but I would say it's like a 3-month learning curve. But once you've done it, and once you've got it, you just keep everything the same, and it just, you know that it's going to look amazing. One thing I remember reading about or watching before I bought it was there was a bit of criticism about the it's called HDR, or it's like a beta HDR. Effectively what it is it's got the 709, which is super contrasty, and it's got this other option which is basically slightly flatter. It's not that flat, you can still look at it fine, focus fine, you don't need a lot over it, it's absolutely fine. But what it is it's giving you all of the dynamic range that the sensor's capable of giving you, which is about 11 stops, 12 stops maybe, I don't know. It's not loads, but it's giving you everything. But a lot of people were saying that the colours are funky, whatever. I have to say, I haven't found this, but quite early on I shot in daylight, sunlight, middle of the day, and I shot a color reference card which had all the different things, and then I went into DaVinci and I realigned all of the magenta, the yellow, the reds, the blues, the cyans, and I realigned them and I readjusted for exposure, and then I created a LUT. And ever since then, because I'm always shooting outside generally, 5600 Kelvin is fine, I'm always sticking with that. Then I just put this LUT on that I designed and it looks amazing, absolutely amazing. But to be fair to Freefly, it looks pretty good to begin with. I've just made it look amazing, but it doesn't look bad whatsoever. So yeah, and if you know how to grade, then it's not hard. The only thing you have to be aware of is if you underexpose, you're toast. If you overexpose, you're done. You got to expose correctly. You can't, there's no get out of jail with this camera. If you've underexposed, you try lifting those shadows, oh my god, it's horrible. You've got like fixed pattern noise, you've got weird multicolored grain or noise. And then if you overexpose, if you clip, that ain't coming back. That's clip. It's actually, in practice, knowing the limitations, you just have to light properly. And you have to use fill light, stuff like that. But if you light properly, it's not a problem. It's fine. But it is something to consider. This is different to a cinema lens. Like, this does 24 frames per second, but you'd be a bit of a Looney Tune if you shot a film at 24 frames per second on this camera, because you're going to get all the weaknesses and you're not going to be benefiting from its strength, which is slow-mo. So yeah, it's definitely not a camera that you can just use for everything. It's a camera you use slow motion alongside your cinema camera. That's what it is. But yeah, we'll be showing you some footage that I've shot with it, and it's, I'm quite happy with some of it. But I think this camera is pretty amazing at this time of filming this. It's like September 2025, and there's this Chinese Pixaboom thing that's just been announced. However, it's a Kickstarter thing, and once it's out of Kickstarter, it's going to be about 12 grand, which is not that far away from this, but this is like Freefly, who invented the gimbal, and they're an amazing company based in America. Fantastic customer service. I've actually emailed their engineers. I've got their email. I can talk to them about stuff. It's incredible. I don't have that relationship with any other company, so they're unbelievably great. So personally speaking, for an extra 2 grand or 3 grand or whatever it's going to be, I'd much rather be in bed with Freefly, a company that are fantastic, than unknowns from China. Not that there's anything wrong with being from China, no problem whatsoever, but they have no history. So who's to say that they're going to do anything they say they're going to do? So this camera always getting updates. I remember when they brought out the 2.5K, which has basically got faster, faster frames. It's got more frames, but it's not such a high resolution sensor. It's not so suitable for cinema. It's more for science. But they gave all of the same frame rates to this camera, but in mono mode, so in black and white. So basically, they gave everything they possibly could to this camera, even though they've just got a new camera out. So they're good boys. They're good boys. This and that, I think, is the reason why this is, I think, the Goldilocks perfect balance between the Phantom on the high end. This is still high end, but it's much cheaper. And then you've got some of the new kind of options from China and different people that are going to be a bit cheaper, but I don't think they're cheap enough to warrant the risk. And I think it sits in the middle, and I think it's the best option personally at the moment. But yeah, this I would definitely recommend this to anyone who's on the fence. But even if you're maybe if you're trying to rent one, I would definitely try, and if you're going to rent one, if you've never used a slow motion camera before, rent it for an extra couple of days and have a go. Try using it in your garden if it's a sunny day, or try doing your lighting setup and then looking at the footage back and checking you're happy with it, because you might think, no, I'll be alright, I'll do it wide open f1.2, or I'll do it like this, I'll do it the same settings as all my other cameras, and then you don't get that look that you're after. You have to live with this a little while before you learn how to really get the best out of it. So yeah, if you've never used something like this before, rent it first, or rent it an extra couple of days before your big job, so you can kind of get to grips with it. Other than that, I've probably forgotten about a billion things, but I've been rambling long enough. Yeah, this is my long-term review of the Freefly Ember, and my verdict is brilliant. Thank you.